burp in me, but it doesn't want to come out.
Well, I say let it fly when it's ready. I am not offended by burps.
Good.
And if the listeners are, they can fast forward.
I can mute my mic. It'll be all right.
Also that.
Hi, and welcome to the Inner Moxie podcast, the podcast about not one, but two neurodivergent adults trying to live their lives on the Neuro D list and not hate themselves in the process. I'm your host, Ronnie.
And I'm Zadie.
And this week, we are talking about disclosure. Again. And I didn't have to update my script.
Great. What a win.
Whee!
All right, well, Moxie meter time.
Moxie meter time indeed. Oh, we're starting off with me. I guess that makes sense.
Yes.
So, this is literally how we start off every podcast, and I'm unprepared.
I mean, it's just how you feel.
Yeah, I know. No, it's been. I'll give it a 4. Things have been going pretty well. I've mentioned on here before. I'm prepping up big for my big gig with the Burlesque Hall of Fame in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, and
that's a word.
What's
beautiful Las Vegas?
It is beautiful at night, not in the daytime.
Okay.
All right. All right.
To each their own.
And then, yeah. So I'm feeling good about that. Getting that ready. I will say today somebody yelled something at me when I went into the Home Depot, and they just yelled 1983.
Close.
And my basic assumption was that because I was wearing my battle vest, as they call them, that they associated that with punk rock, and punk rock for them was 1983. But it seemed so weird. Like I couldn't imagine driving by somebody like all decked out in flannels and stuff and going 1994.
Dead Kurt Cobain.
I mean, only for 8 of the months. We still had him for 4.
I guess.
Or I guess 3 full months.
I had him for none of it because I was in 5th grade not listening to grunge yet.
I was also in 5th grade not listening to grunge yet.
Were you offended by this 1983 comment?
No, I was more perplexed by it. Like, because at no point did it sound like it was... It did sound like someone like, yeah, man.
How do you know it was for you?
I mean, I guess I technically don't. But it felt like it was directed at me. Like it.
Did you make eye contact? I'm asking because I want to understand.
Somebody drove by and did it.
So you were crossing the street?
Yeah, I was making my way into the Home Depot because I am very handy. Mm-hmm. And then I passed in front of a car. One drove behind me, and then another one, as it was driving behind me, yelled out 1983. And I was like, hi.
Okay. So they went behind you so you didn't see them?
No.
Okay. I would not have picked up on that if it was me. That's I guess why I'm asking how you know.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So other than that perplexity of not knowing what that was about, or having to guess it just seemed weird. But yeah, no. Things are going. I'm holding together. I am doing holding together stuff. Good. I am working on my window of tolerance and being aware of that, so that I am, because apparently I get hyper fixated and hypo fixated, and so just trying to be aware of those times so that I could be aware of what's causing it and try and do those things. But yeah, where's your inner Moxie at this week?
Today or this week?
Whichever, you get to choose.
Oh, I need forced choices.
Okay. How about from last Tuesday?
Well, that drags it down. Actually, I don't know. So my Adderall XR, I still have some, but I'm rationing it because they haven't been able to fill that one yet, and I have the other ones. So I didn't take it over the weekend, and I missed my windows for the other one. And so I just had an unmedicated, I took a vacation I had a terrible weekend. It won't sound terrible, but it was not restful. It was not fun. I did spend a lot of time. I watched a show, two shows to completion. But it was like mental torture.
When you say to completion, like you binged 2 series worth of shows, or
2 seasons.
Okay.
Of they're the same show, but
sure. It's
kind of like, well, okay, it was Them and then Them the Scare, which Them was good. The Scare was annoying to me.
I have not heard of these.
Oh, they're horror shows on Prime. So anyway, that's what I did this weekend. Not having medication wasn't great. I got nothing done. I didn't prep my food or anything for the week. It was just a nice glimpse at what things could still be like, I guess. And how I just never did anything and always felt tortured about it. So that was a low, but also back to routine. So I think I'm around like a 6.5 today.
That's something.
Yeah, I think too, just overall, I had something to say and I lost the train.
Choo choo. Well, I was going to say, well, you think about it. I think that is something, and I don't know, maybe this is just something me and you share outside of neurodivergency, but I think it might ring more with neurodivergent folks. It's hard to explain of like, I sat down and I did nothing and it was excruciating. Whereas like the other weekend, I took some time, I planned, and I was like, you know what? Starting at this time on Saturday, I'm going to start working on my pinball machine. And I'm just going to go through my steps. And I did it. And it was so nice. Oh, to finally get in there and start doing the things that I like doing and getting it cleaned up, getting the glass back on it. And so it was, but like, because I had planned it, I would rather do things that I would rather, it's more relaxing to do something that I planned than to not do anything when it's unplanned.
Right. One day was kind of planned, but I was being rigid about it, which was part of the problem, which was like, oh, I already had this nail appointment set. I was supposed to help my friend in the morning, but then someone else was able to cover, so I didn't have to, which I was like, cool. But then I was like, I have this nail appointment at fucking 12 p.m. now. It's right in the middle of my day because I don't stay up that late. And it requires me to get up and leave the house. And then tomorrow, anyway, I don't know. It just was a lot of mental torture, which is not something I'm accustomed to now, like to that degree. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember the point I was going to make about today. Oh, I do also think I don't remember to not necessarily like protect myself, but just like I'm trying to check in with myself more, because sometimes I pick up on stuff that other people's are like other people's, what? Has nothing to do with other races or anything. Just other souls, right. other people milling around where I'm at. I kind of absorb whatever it is they're putting off sometimes, or like giving out. And I haven't been conscious of that. And so I've been having extra weird moods. So this is separate from like the sensory sound stuff. So I need to be more cognizant of that, because I was so low today. Earlier at work, I didn't know how I was going to come here and do this. I was not looking forward to it at all, because I was like, I don't want to interact with other people at all today. I was also in the middle of a project, but I was tired. I was, and then now that it's not like that for me and nothing really has changed, it could have been something like that. Anything that comes out of the blue like that for me, I kind of want to figure out where it's coming from.
The feelings came out of the blue?
Yeah. Okay. Just like I felt restless, not like antisocial kind of. And I was like, this is not usually to this degree, even though I was in the middle of like a project that's due on Friday. It was beyond what it's like for me normally. So I want to check in with myself about these things. And if it's not me, then like recognize that and just like shake it off, literally. Mm-hmm. But instead, I kind of engaged it and kind of tried to be a hermit, and I was not a wonderful coworker. I don't know. 6.5.
6.5? I think that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. I think that sounds accurate. That's what I'm trying to say. The other words were kindergarten gibberish.
Oh.
It sounds up pretty good.
It sounds up we're firing on all cylinders with this.
All right.
Okay, any follow-ups from last time?
Yes, our housekeeping. I did have one note that I wanted to make. And this is, I don't think I said anything in a wrong way per se, but I did want to elaborate on something. I brought up just through the course of natural conversation that sometimes the parallels between ableism and racism and the parallel of colorblindness, I believe, was exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about disclosure and people just, ignore that about your, do the color, the ableist version of colorblind. And one thing I think is always worth noting when bringing those 2 points together that I did not note is that clearly and obviously lots of people of color also have neurodivergencies. And I just wanted to take a quick second to acknowledge that, because I did not last week, and I think it's good practice to do, because and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm pretty sure we're not trying to be in the habit of leveraging the
white agenda.
Yeah, well, leveraging the trials and tribulations of people of color for our benefit. True. And so I think one of the ways to best counteract that is at bare minimum to acknowledge that that there are people of color that are also neurodivergent.
Well, aren't you also a person of color?
It is well, for those of you who may not know, it's because I'm half Mexican. It's something I'm very, very proud of. But I'm also very aware that I walk through the world with the privilege of a white person.
And you look like a white person, which has a lot to do with privilege.
Yes. I was going to say, which is a lot why the last name Ursenbach also.
Yeah, the Ursenbach just took the... I'm right, I shouldn't say it. So it took the brown right out of you.
Right? But yes, so I appreciate you acknowledging that. But also, so it's always like I have no hang-ups about referring to myself as Mexican. It because of the privilege, it is a little stranger to refer to myself as a person of color. And I'm not saying that should be the same for everybody. Mm-hmm. That's just where I stand in my particular situation. Yeah,
makes sense. Mm-hmm. You lived all of the privilege of a white man.
I mean, a lot of it. All of it. Yeah.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Was that the only one?
Yeah, I just wanted.
I didn't think about any of that. If you were bringing that up in order to negate something that you said in the first.
No, yeah, okay. And that's kind of why I started off with saying I don't think I said anything wrong. I don't think it was. I don't want to negate anything. I just wanted to add something to it. I'm trying to. I'm just trying to be better. I'm not trying to, I don't think I did bad, but I still want to do better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. We're always wanting to do better.
Yeah.
When you know better, you do better. I have a lot of isms coming out that are not landing, just for the record. You've heard it. You've heard it here. If this all stays in.
I was going to say, I think there's exactly two of us in the room right now. I think. Yeah. Sometimes our producer Robin is behind me when I don't know.
Sometimes there's ghosts you don't believe in.
Yes. I just didn't imagine a ghost throwing peanuts at my head or something. I'm like, no ghosts.
If they did.
Doing the
you would believe.
As always. And I loved I'm a big X-Files fan, and I love Scully, is one of my favorite characters. And but I do love eventually it was like, I mean, you've seen all of the stuff now, Scully. You're in a particular, being skeptic really doesn't make that much sense for you at this point. It makes me feel better to know what we're going to talk about.
Doing it the hardest way.
Let's try not to. Probably. That should have been the name of the podcast.
Doing it the hardest way. Yeah.
Oh, what I was going to say is there's exactly 2 of us in the room right now. And so I think the isms working or not working, they may be working more than you think. It's just...
Maybe.
Sometimes you catch a vibe, you know?
Yeah, my vibe is I'm feeling boring. I have a little headache starting. Mm-hmm. I've got nausea. Not sick. That's where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. So I'm watching everything as it's happening, and I'm just not impressed with me.
I'm trying to change my own channel.
Yeah, I can't do it. It's the one I can't erase. And we've got this cricket out here. We've got 3 people here. Do you not hear that?
I do have a cricket.
It's just never going to end.
I mean, it will one day.
Yeah, it will die soon. I don't know how long they live, but definitely not as long as the natural life of a human. I do have an update from last time. Okay. After listening back, I realized, okay, so when I was talking about how I don't like target specific people to talk about when something comes up, I think I do. It's just super rare, so I didn't think about it because the last time I did this was like a year ago. So I talked to all the people that I talked to regardless, and then if I'm unsure or need a little bit of clarity or something, there's just a couple extra people that I will initiate. So if I initiate something, it's for a purpose, and that would probably mean interaction. I don't know if it was vulnerabilities or not. I guess it is if I don't know what I'm doing or feel like I want someone's opinion, then I am unsure about something. So I'm assuming that's kind of what vulnerabilities are. Right. Something you're unsure about and unconfident in, not confident in.
Yeah, I would get, I mean, I wish they'd make some giant book that just had the definitions of words in them.
I've heard tell they might do that.
But I kind of think of a vulnerability as trusting someone not to hurt you. So like if I'm going to be vulnerable with you, I'm going to tell you something that you could use to hurt me.
Oh. Okay. Okay. The thing I'm thinking about that I'm not going to say the subject matter on, just because it's work related. So the extra people, 1 yes, 1 no.
Okay.
I guess. Well, yeah, that's true. And then okay, well, never mind. Well, when we were talking about my arrow aceness and I had that revelation, I was like, I need to tell my family before this airs. So I did initiate that conversation.
Wait, what did you need? You had told your family that you're arrow ace, hadn't you?
The day before the episode aired, yeah, I did. It was all so very new.
Right. No, and I totally get that. Or no, I could have sworn that you told me you like had told them when you told them about your ADHD diagnosis or something like that. Which no, that timeline doesn't.
They knew. No, it doesn't. No, I threw in the autism thing. I did tell them, but I told you all first because you were the first outside people that I saw.
Which I feel very honored about.
Okay. I mean, I don't want you to not feel special. It's just like the sequence of the week too. This is
yeah.
You know, this is exactly what this is like for me though. Like I didn't feel like I wouldn't like. I knew that the people here in this place would be very accepting, and I didn't feel uncertain about it. But then we talked about it on air, which is great, and then that didn't air for another 6 days or whatever. So I was like, I have to tell them before this.
I tried my best. No, I'm kidding.
No, you're great. You've done it. all. So yeah, I did do that because it's not like I was not trying to tell. It's just like it didn't feel like that big of a deal that I just needed to tell everybody right away.
Right.
It just felt like, oh, that fits. Okay, I've got a new, not a new identity, but like I've got a name for this thing.
Right.
And I just didn't feel like it sunk in. It just kind of like blended in. And it didn't feel like I needed to just, not in like a hide it way. It's just like I also didn't feel the need to just like sing about it to everybody that I came across, like on purpose.
Yeah. Well, and I think people are, and oddly, I think that goes a lot with the disclosure theme we're talking about now. I think those standards are going to be different for everybody, and those timelines are going to be different for everybody, and those situations are going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
And so
it is. I just knew, okay, this is a big thing that shouldn't be heard about from anyone but me for those 2 people. And that turned into 3 because my aunt was there. I don't know if she listens. So.
I was going to say, though, because your family listens to the podcast and you talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, but I don't know how, like my mom, I don't ask anyone I know how far they are. It's only if they bring it up because I don't want anything to be weird.
Right.
I wouldn't, because this is projection. I would not want to be asked. Like if I had a friend that was like making music or something and I didn't like it, I would not want them to ask me how they liked it. That would just be torture because then I would feel like I'd have to lie to them and I don't like to lie. So then I would just avoid them.
Right. I used to have this friend, but they wanted an opinion from me. I haven't seen him for 7 years.
Well, I mean, regardless of whether someone says that they want feedback or not, which I do, but like not everybody is like that, you know? And so many times people are just looking for, wow, you're so great. You know, I don't want to hear that shit either. You know, just be honest. But most people don't operate in honesty like that.
Right.
So I just want to not talk about it or make people feel like they have to. Like, I just want that to be like a weird thing that I'm making people do because it's, anyway, that's where that is coming from. But yeah, they do listen. The last time my mom brought it up, she had listened to 2 episodes. My dad, I don't know where he is on it. I don't know if they still listen. I know my brother listens because we can see them. One's from Japan, and it's pretty isolated. Our audience there at this point. I
don't know. I guess it is. Yeah.
Yeah. There's 3 people there doing this, something like that. Thank you, Robbie. That's my brother. Hello.
Thank you, Robbie. We appreciate
Robbie and Katsushi, and anonymous 3rd person, unless they're downloading on 2 devices separately. Well, anyway.
You just busted Robbie over the...
I did. That's what a big sister does. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to say I do that. But I had to think about it, and it took listening back. I don't know. There's something that happens in the listen back where I'm just like, oh, I said this, but actually with more time in between, I needed to add to this.
Yeah. And maybe that is something we should do an episode about eventually is I think for anybody, but maybe there's some unique aspects for it it is strange to listen back to conversations. That's not a very human thing.
No, it is interesting though. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. It's,
but only once I listened to, I forget which one it was. And then when we were driving back from Vegas, he was like, oh, let's listen to your podcast. And so he put on the one where I was talking about baby reindeer. And that was like at 30 or 40 minutes in. And I was like, okay, let's move on to something else. I've already heard this. I've said it and now I've heard it. And now you're making me hear it again.
Right.
But thank you.
I'm going to take a nap. You listen.
I was driving. I could not nap. Even though I was in a self-driving capable Tesla, I don't trust it. No.
Nobody should be trusting it to nap.
No, that's why they're getting in accidents.
Yeah.
All right. So we are going to continue. I'm hoping to finish this time because, I mean, no pressure on us. There are just some other things I want to start talking about.
Yeah.
Now, topic-wise. So in the workplace, you know, if you're considering disclosing your diagnosis for any reason, take the business into consideration, and here's some things to think about. So, number one, is your company primed for disclosing? So that means have others with NeuroD disclosed in the past, and what with a favorable outcome?
I guess that would be an important factor.
Well, I mean,
Factor.
It's a factor, raptor.
I turned into a robot.
You did. We are robots. I think it would be important to know whether it went negatively too, though.
Mm-hmm.
Or how else would you know? I mean, how would you know? But if someone's talking about it, this also said, what types of mental health programs does your company embrace? Which is interesting because is this a thing?
Actually, you know what? I was very surprised about this. I think I mentioned this to you. Slightly before Christmas time, so slightly before we met, I spent a little over a month working at FedEx, and one of their benefits that started day one was that you could talk to a mental health professional through them.
I think I do know this. My ex used to probably still works there.
Yeah. And so that I was very surprised to see that there. Yeah, which I thought was pretty cool. And I've done a little extra job hunting from time to time, and I've seen some companies that have that listed as a benefit, which I think is a great thing, honestly.
I do too. Yeah, so it's good to know if they do that, and you can always ask HR because they should know if there's anything. I don't know things, and not that I am HR, but yeah, okay. HR will be able to assist you, I'm assuming, and if your place doesn't have an HR, because some places are very small, whoever is the owner or paying, I would assume a small business, it would just be like the business owner, which I would venture to guess does not have a mental health program.
Well, I was going to say it's very strange to me because, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I very recently, because something on TikTok, somebody was like, oh, you should look up the definition of what a small business is. And a small business is much bigger than I thought it would be. So there probably are a good handful of small businesses that may have those resources, especially if it's the kind of business that prioritizes that kind of thing for their employees, which isn't unheard of.
I don't know. It is bigger than you would think. Some places don't. For example, like I've been with my current agency since 2012. They were 3 years old, but I think we probably had about 50 employees at the time. And we are a lot bigger than that now. And we're a mid-size, but I don't know. But we did not have an HR at that time with 50 employees. I think we got to that when we moved to this building where we're at now. I would assume that there was 150 to 200 people working there at the time. Not that we're a good gauge of that, but that's when we introduced an official HR.
Right.
In my recollection.
Well, and I was going to say, I just looked it up right now. From the Small Business Administration, fewer than 500 employees or with revenue ranging from 1 million to over 40 million.
That's a small business?
Yeah.
What is the mom and pop shop considered? A micro business?
I guess maybe. I don't know. I'm not as quick on the Google as you are.
I have no Google. It is my brain.
I mean, yeah.
I wish.
But yeah, I guess micro business would probably be a term to use.
I don't know. Anyway. Regardless, talk to HR or the owner or whoever's in charge of whoever you're supposed to go to if you have a problem.
Right.
in the field or whatever. Ask your supervisor. They should know who those people are.
Unless your supervisor's a dick.
Yeah. And then you should still talk to HR about that.
Yeah, well, if you have an HR, I think that's always kind of a good place to start, depending on the relationship that you have with it. Some companies are good companies to work for, I assume.
Yeah.
But
I would say mine's a great one. I believe that. They're
No,
not
I'm
paying
kidding.
me for this. I have not disclosed where I work, but some people could figure it out maybe. And I do like it.
You heard it here first. Zanny's company doesn't pay her.
Oh, now you're going to get me into trouble. Okay, so another thing to consider under the are they primed for it? How open is your organization to providing accommodations to other groups of employees with disabilities or challenges? So like looking around, like, do we even have people that have like maybe a visible disability working here? How are they treated? How are things handled? What does that look like? Like those are all indicators of willingness to work with you about it.
Right. Well, and too, like I think there's a certain amount. Just to remind me of with my company, when we got our first office, it was a small office, and it was on the second story, and it started off with just two of us, but we did eventually get a third employee. And like one of the things we just never thought about was that there was no wheelchair access to the second floor, and there was no elevator in that building. Same with I think the second building. We ended up moving downstairs, but then to another building that also had no elevator access. And it was just like, the second place did have elevator access. But the point is, we didn't think about that, and that was like a hurdle. It honestly didn't cross our paths until we were having a meeting with somebody, a friend of ours, who we work with creatively, and they weren't in a wheelchair, but they had hurt their foot, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna have to go up this. Oh, what if we did?" And so I think there is that aspect, especially when we're talking about these smaller companies that are pre-HR, and they should. I mean, hopefully they should have decent people running these companies that were like, well, we're a small business. What are we supposed to fucking do? Deal with it.
Well, regardless of what your size is, like even in California, which it's relatively easy to hire and fire people here, for whatever reason, but also a very litigious state, I would say. And you could get nailed for stuff, whether or not you have intentions or not.
Right.
So, I mean, be a decent human is my general advice.
Yeah. And I guess the kind of point I'm willing up is sometime be ready for the fact that maybe you're the first person putting this on their radar. And so that might take some doing. And
I think things aren't intentional. It's just, laws aren't created proactively, it's all in response to things that have happened. So, as a small business grows, things start coming across your desk or whatever it is, that you need. Oh, I wasn't thinking about this. I really got to deal with this, and now we have to plan better. It just comes with experience. It comes with whatever type of education, if you have one, in the business where, there's a lot of things that go into it. So it's not like, we don't hire people with wheelchairs. Right. It's like, oh shit, we didn't think about this. Like, oh fuck, like we didn't mean to exclude all of these candidates.
Right.
It's not like that. And most of the time, I can't speak for everybody. I would say most people are not thinking in those terms.
Yeah, well, and I it's one of those ones you hope it's that they're certainly not thinking in those terms. But. Yeah, well, and too, it's I think a lot of times, it is there are lots of downsides to working for a bigger company, I'm sure, but that sometimes you may fall into that downside for working with a smaller company, of they might not have had the foresight to have planned for something like this, or the experience or the resources to do something about it. But hopefully they would try. Hopefully they would make some time, because there's, wheelchair is one I think we use from time to time because of how visible it is. But also, I feel like with a lot of the non-visible stuff, the more neurodivergent stuff, there are a lot more there are a lot of things that you can do without making physical alterations to your space. And so, and maybe I'm just unaware of what those, I'm sure
I could tell you.
Oh, I was gonna say, I'm sure people with wheelchairs, there's probably some effective ways that you can make changes without. I just don't know what they are.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
I thought you were talking about just ADHD stuff.
Yeah,
I got some accommodations on the books now.
For sure. Well, and two, I think that's a good place to go from here. I realized I was comparing accommodations from different disabilities, and I didn't know much about the other one, so I should probably stop. And that was my attempt to stop myself.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I know, like, with my mom's twin sister, I've talked about her on this podcast before, but she was born paraplegic, and she just always kind of had to bring like something to transfer herself. I mean, not her, she needed help, but like it was like a wooden board thing, so that's how we got her in the car. She slid up. My dad would help her slide into the thing, like from the chair to the. I mean, it's a ordeal. I mean, now there's lots of, physical accommodations in the space. I don't know, other than, the obstacle of stairs. Most places are pretty accessible,
right,
if they were built recently.
Right. Well, I was going to say, that was, I think, one of the things that's why I didn't think of the elevator when we got our first place, was that, like, it never even occurred to me that a place didn't have an elevator. Like, it just, that's not, I took for granted. That's exactly.
Apparently you've never been to New York, which I also have not gone, but lots of buildings there. You could live on the 7th floor with no elevator. That just sounds like torture.
It does sound like torture.
From an able-bodied perspective, it sounds like torture.
And also, you are 100% correct. I have never been to New York.
Yeah, I have no desire. When I read this article, it's very like on the defense and kind of like, you really need to think about whether you're going to disclose, which sucks but it is a real consideration.
No.
Overall, because if you're doing, an okay job and you're asking for all these accommodations to help you do your job better,
right,
it might be easier for the employer to just let you go and fill your spot. So it's like, how valuable do you think you are to this place? Or what kind of special skills do you have that are hard to find to make this employer more apt or willing to do this for you? Which sucks. But the answer to can you accommodate this can be no. There are some jobs, no matter how much a person might want to do them. Well,
and I think too, like, and it's something something that's been a very big concern with me over the years is, I've talked about how I'm an editor and stuff like that, but I started off in sound. I started off recording music. From music, I started working with my friends making movies, and then later I got into some of the visual elements, visual editing, and a little more. But like, sound has always been kind of that thing, and I knew that if something happened to my hearing, I could no longer do sound.
Right.
There's just not a way around.
There's no accommodation to give you the same level of.
Or we'll put it this way: if I completely lost my hearing, or even then, if my hearing was damaged in a very substantial way, I at least couldn't do sound like all of the aspects that I was doing on movies. I could probably still edit a podcast. But if I couldn't balance anymore, if I had lost the range at which hums were occurring, I couldn't edit dialogue anymore.
Yeah.
And so, there's always lots of gray area. There's lots of room to kind of push and pull, but there's, if my hearing was damaged enough, I wouldn't be able to mix music.
Right.
And that's just kind of how it's, and also kind of the, there may be accommodations you can make along the way. Maybe you could, if you knew that you were losing the bass frequencies, you could make your personal setup hit the bass harder. But eventually it's just not, the reality of some situations are the reality of some situations.
For sure. Like if these accommodations can help you do the job description to the fullest, or in the way that it's intended, then I think the case for making those accommodations is appropriate, Yeah.
But also too, I think that would be something that was pretty readily apparent from the get-go in a lot of sense. Because a lot of times you are talking about those extremes. And so I would hope that there would be at least something you could try in most cases. Especially if we're just roping it back to neurodivergency.
Yeah, I think it would just depend on the type of job you were looking to do.
Yeah.
And whether it's grounded in a skill set that you have, which some people honestly don't see their own skill set and why they can't do certain things, or why they're actually very good at something else. They just don't like it. And so they don't want to do it, stuff like that. Who I want to be versus who I am, let's see. Another consideration, how small, I don't know why I put that in quotes, is your industry. In some industries, disclosure could be, here's why, could be passed through the grapevine and make its way to other employers. So actually I heard about this so I read that book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, by Jeanette McCurdy, and she was a child actor. I don't know if she acts now. That's not the point of the book. But it's her memoir. But she talked about how
she was a cat, right?
Yes.
In
Carly. She was in
Sam and Cat. Yeah, my daughter watched it.
Okay, but before that show,
that was a spin-off of two shows, right?
iCarly is where it started, but her mom would drag her to all of these auditions, and she could cry on demand. And she also talked about, okay, that was really great for her, and that spread through the grapevine, and she took direction well. But if a kid didn't take direction well, those kids don't get jobs anymore. So not that that's an accommodation, but that's kind of like an example of okay, is your industry like that where, you disclose, hey, I have autism, I have sensory issues.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, every prospective employer knows and will hire you.
Right.
Which is something you should consider, even though it fucking sucks and shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's am I going to be the headphones person? Because I need headphones to block out the thing,
Yeah. And is that going to preclude you from getting work in your preferred field or where your skill set is? Well,
and too, I think even down to some of the stereotypes of is this person going to mesh well? Especially, some of the not great stereotypes about people, particularly with autism, of, is this person going to mesh well? Are they going to be able, are they going to be,
can they make a friend?
Yeah. Are they going to be weirding out everybody else here? Are we all going to have to bend over backwards for this person?
Which you probably should. And people will, regardless of neuro D or not, people will bend over backwards. You see this with, diva actors all the time. People will put up with a lot of shit that they shouldn't because of a very specific and rare skill, or perceived skill or whatever it is, people cannot, that's how you get people acting like assholes all the time and getting away with it.
Yeah.
In some of the extreme cases, I don't want to say names.
Yeah.
Okay. So another thing to consider, what is your standing as an employee? For me, it's hard. It was hard for me to ask for accommodations, not because I didn't think that they would be considered and granted, but because standing up for myself historically has been very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
This did not go difficult at all for me. I just was able to have it like a normal conversation. I mean, with HR, I was talking to her the whole time about it. Like, this is what I'm thinking, blah, blah, blah. Here's my documentation, whatever. And so then, of course, my file is in the president's office. So I knew that he would have to see him. Yes. President Biden's office in the White House. That's how high profile I am. Anyway. So then I got a message, hey, let's talk about this with him. And it went well. Lots of solutions came up. He gave me like gun range level headphones that are Bluetooth that I could put on. I mean, hybrid is built into my contract. Anywhere where you're like, you have to be here all the time, whatever that setting is, feels like handcuffs. So if you were like, you have to work remotely all the time, I would be like, fuck you, I'm not working from home. Like,
I'm going to work at the Starbucks sometime. I'll work in the garage.
I'm coming into the office. You can't stop me. I just bumped that. I need options. It's how I've built my life up until getting stuck in the office in the first place. And I say getting stuck because, at a certain point, I wasn't wanting to pass up great opportunities for myself. I could see that. But I'd always had a job where I was like going to different locations all day, which works out really well for a person with ADHD. And then you're telling me, oh, I have to sit in this like 10 by 10, which people want this shit. They would love to have their own office and be able to shut their door and all of those things. And since it was the only choice for a few years anyway, it was very, very hard. Because I just don't like being told what to do like that.
Right.
Don't tell me where to go.
I will say the change in, and this isn't so much about disclosure, but whatever. The change can be really helpful with ADHD. And like I know I kind of balance, 3 jobs at the moment of stay-at-home dad, podcast, engineer, producer, and robot trainer with the AI.
That's a scary one.
I for sure couldn't do the AI thing all day. There's just no way. Honestly, I can't do it for more than an hour. I could do it for more than an hour 3 times a day sometimes.
And you're building stupid robots.
My robots are smart.
Okay, because you do it 1 hour a day. You do it 3 hours a day, they start talking weird. I don't know.
No, I was going to say, sometimes I do it 3 hours a day, but in 1 hour blocks.
Oh.
Because after 1 hour, I'm just kind of burnt with it. But like if there was that structure where it was like, oh, from 9 to noon, you have to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know how well I would survive in that particular setup.
Same. But that's why we're not all the same people, because some people, a lot of people really like having their schedule. Like there was this teacher that I had a client in her class, and she loved just coming to school, doing her thing and leaving. And I was like, that sounds like torture to me, but okay. But that just was just like, oh, she like really enjoys, she takes her dogs for a walk. She puts on her high heels she wears every day, and she marches on over to school. And
high heels.
Yeah.
Me.
She was a hoot. She is from New Jersey.
Okay.
With the full accent. She loves glitter and sparkle.
Doesn't really.
Yeah, I don't know. She was just a lot of fun. But she really enjoyed that routine and just having a place to go that was not at home. And, this is where she was for this time. And then she could go home, and I guess she could leave it all behind too. Like, I don't know. And a lot of people are like that. I'm just not, so I don't get it. But I get that a lot of people are like that.
Right.
And I'm glad they exist, because then I don't have to do those things.
Right.
Because that would suck for me. Yeah, so considering your standing as an employee, I also know that I'm well liked by I guess I can't speak for everybody, but I think everybody at work likes me. And especially I know that I wouldn't have gotten into these positions if I hadn't been a good, outstanding employee. So I knew that, asking for these things now would be not an easy yes in the sense of like I am entitled to these things, even though through laws I am.
Right.
But it didn't feel like that. It's just, I know that I bring something to the table that will cause people to want to make accommodations to make sure I can do my job well and better.
Yeah. And I have been in positions where that is absolutely not true for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I try and do a good job wherever I go. But like before I started my own company, when I was doing when I was doing office work, which was completely, I was there for one purpose, and that was to do good enough to earn the meager amount of money that I paid. I wasn't going beyond and below, and I tried not to, or above and beyond, and I tried not to do below.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to cost the company anything. I didn't want to, but like I was there to do that. And I don't know that I would have asked in that situation. I don't know. Part of that is there's a big social anxiety I've talked about that I have. But part of it was like, I didn't know, if I was in a position that would have been taken into account for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, employers can term at will for whatever reason. You don't have to be given, at least in California.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to give a reason at all. So,
yeah, I do think though, if you do that without a paper trail in California, because I have known employers that are very, very, they make sure they get a paper trail of these are the warnings we gave. These are the da-da-da.
You don't have to do that.
They don't have to do that, but what you have to do and what you're going to have, like, I guess what I'm saying is there's always like, this is what you legally have to do, but if
Not
you
legally.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
I happen to know some things about California law now.
That's
thanks
good.
to work.
No, I guess what I'm saying is, people, whether they did something illegal or not, are going to try and avoid the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can be sued. This much I do know. You can be sued regardless of whether you've done something right or wrong.
You can be sued for anything.
Yeah. And I think that it especially goes for employment stuff. So I think that's one of the reasons why people double check and triple check and have that paper trail down of, even if they don't want to, it will very much expedite.
Okay.
How dare you correct
Expedia?
me? .com.
Expedite
the
I'm not trying
process.
to counteract you.
Mm-hmm.
I just am going to add
Mm-hmm.
that you could argue that having zero paper trail could be even more beneficial to an employer, because at least in California, being at will, there's nothing to contest.
Okay. I will put it to you this way. I have very clearly reached the end of my understanding of this. And so, like, and I don't mean that in a weird way. I realize this is not a hill for me to die on. Mm-hmm. And I have literally no evidence other than like, I don't know. I've heard different, but who the fuck have I heard from?
I don't know.
So,
I know that big companies tend to have processes about
mm-hmm.
things. I just have seen a few different ways and a few different places that I've worked do things differently and handle things differently. And now that I am directly involved in like employment stuff, like there's no paper trail that has to exist. Like that's not compulsory here. I do think that exists in other states probably, which is why like a national company would need to have like a blanket, okay, we can't just like, okay, in Arkansas we do this, and in Alaska we do this, and in California we do, like that isn't going to work. Like that is just a schizophrenic business model. that is not going to make sense and it will crash and burn without medication and treatment.
Very strange you used an ableist term on our able podcast.
Who would have thought? Yeah. So yeah,
I think this might be a good point to point out, or at least I'll point out for me. Not in no way this is not a legal podcast.
No.
So
don't take legal advice from us.
Yeah, that would be. We don't even agree on our legal advice. Apparently,
we don't. Once you kind of figure out, like, okay, is my company in a position to possibly say yes to these things? Do I have a decent standing? Do I show good work? Okay, so then maybe I move on to the next phase. Okay, so what could be the advantages of disclosing? You could get accommodations and legal protection, which is great. You can make your job easier in that you can focus on tasks rather than managing symptoms. You can increase your productivity. You can increase efficiency. You can allow your work to... it can allow you to work more in your natural state of creativity. So one of the things I did request was 25% of my time in atypical hours, which is super helpful, which for me...
I don't know what atypical hours are.
So not the, 8 to 4, 9 to 5 situation. Like for me, sometimes like I really just need to get some shit done at 6 a.m. Because I'm up early all the time.
Yeah.
And that's when my brain is at its sharpest. So if I'm in the middle of doing something, I need to think creative. Like in my job, I wouldn't think necessarily it's a creative job, but I actually think it really is. And that's why I'm in this position.
Yeah. Well, and I think creative thinking is an important part of a lot of job aspects or jobs in general.
Yeah. So like for me, like I get those inspirations at like 6 a.m. I would rather spend 2 hours at that time devoted to that. And then, do the rest of my time, just having that freedom and not feeling like, okay, well, I guess I just gave 10 hours today, which I'm happy to do sometimes. But like, I also am not trying to, I'm salaried. I don't get overtime. So not that I do as much work as is needed, and sometimes it's more, and I just try to balance that out if I can, if something heavy is happening, which doesn't happen to me very often these days. But, I just try to be mindful of that because I will naturally overwork because that's just how my brain is. Like, I don't need that separation. Like if I can't just like, okay, all of my stuff is at the office. That's it. I'm not taking it home. I can do that because I refuse to move to a desktop. I have a laptop. But I just, I would rather check something really quick. Like it suits my personality that I'm not, because if I don't have it, then I'll just be thinking about it. And it's not the type of anxiety that is worth working on because it doesn't happen every day.
Yes.
I would rather just do it now.
Like in a perfect world, all of the other problems in this universe I have are solved. I can work on that one.
Yes,
but that being said, I get that.
Yeah. Because like I used to have a lot worse anxiety about stuff. And now I've learned when I can let things go. And then there are some things I really don't mind doing them right now. Like who cares? It's 9 o'clock at night. Let me just do this real quick. Then I don't have to do it tomorrow morning or remember to do it. Something like that. So, okay. So those are like some of the things that could happen. There are some pitfalls that could potentially happen too that you need to consider, right? So you could become vulnerable and subject to discrimination. Not great.
Yeah.
It could predispose you to judgments grounded in myths and stigma about your neurogenus. So all of this basically relies on you walking in full well knowing that you will probably have to explain your situation, which, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, it's new for me, but I'm also very accustomed to doing this already and not in a let me make you feel better kind of way. It's just, this is what this looks like for me. This is just my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and two, I'd add two, like one of the weird things is just not something I've thought about before is, I think most of my family and friends know about my neurodiversity. But there's something to be said for how much you've said that in your personal life. And, do you really want the people at work to know before your sister knows or something like that. Which I'm not saying yes or no to, but that is something that you also kind of have to consider on that. There's going to be a certain amount of like, how much have you come out with this in your personal life? And, because there are differing levels. Luckily is a weird term to put for it, but more and more people are getting to being recognized that this is something that continues into adulthood. And there's still shame, about saying it. But a lot of us recognize in adulthood, sometimes, within the last year or two. And, that's just, it's an extra factor that's going to factor in.
Mm-hmm. It is a legit disability, though, which I didn't necessarily think about it in those terms, but it really is. I mean, subject to be protected as well. Which is something I don't think about, which I don't think that's good. I think that was like cultural formation about it. I don't necessarily think that like what are those called? So I'm thinking about when a therapist is diagnosing someone, not with like clinical depression or something like that, but like an adjustment disorder, let's say. That's a popular one because insurances will accept that, but it's also not long lasting. Okay. I don't know that is federally.
I don't know what an adjustment disorder is.
It's like a blanket, kind of like you're having a hard time right now.
Okay.
But it's also not a V code, which a V code is something that could be added to a diagnosis, which kind of helps describe the situation. So like domestic abuse is one of those, let's say, as an example. So it's not a diagnosable thing. It's just something that is happening to you and why you're there.
Okay.
But an adjustment disorder, it's shorter term. It's not stuck with you for life necessarily. And insurance will pay for it. That's the big one.
Okay.
Because anxiety, depression, yes, but those also have longer lasting effects. But like, if you're there because I'm only thinking of grief examples of shorter term things, but
like, would it be like something like, okay,
I lost my job.
Oh, that's so much nicer than mine. I was going to say like my kid passed away or something.
No,
like
that's
that.
grief.
Oh, well,
that's different.
It does sound like it now, but okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it's hard to think about, I lost my job, but that hypothetically is temporary, right?
Right.
Things that are kind of like that, or
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Or, I was like, oh, my kid got shipped off to war, but that is grief kind of.
Yeah.
So that's different. Not that. Yeah. Things that'll, I'm losing my residence potentially, or I've lost it. Stuff like that, where you're talking about something targeted. Oh, okay. So be prepared that employers that may be unaware and don't understand what your neuro-D is and may be biased against it, or, just very ableist about it. One of the common things is like, oh, that's just an excuse.
Dismissive.
Yeah. Like, no, it's an explanation. There's a difference, because there is something where people do take advantage of things that are real for them. I can't make that decision for what that is, but eventually it becomes clear. But it's not most people, and it's not all of the time.
Yeah. Well, and I would say that's something like I struggle with, is trying to find that exact line of like, am I blaming the ADHD? Am I blaming the neurodiversity for this? And that's not, something that has to do with it. And I question that a lot, and I'm probably a little too harsh on myself for that. But not for that, but when I do that. But it is, it's not like there's a booklet that can tell you every single thing that's going on in your life and how directly or indirectly or not at all your neurotype is playing into it.
Yeah. But I think the fact that you're thinking about it a lot, because like I haven't really thought about that for myself, because probably a little bit internalized ableism, but also it really helps me explain why I am doing what I'm doing. For the most part, I'm trying to not do certain things, but I wouldn't say that I personally am using this as an excuse. I'm not trying to get out of anything. No. I'm trying to do things like I'm always like, I love perfecting a system and just making it better and better and more efficient.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great skill to have. Employers, listen up. So yeah, I haven't really thought about it like that. I've heard people say flip comments like, oh, she used, not about me, but she always blames this stuff on the ADHD. And I was like, or she's narrating what's happening for her.
Right.
Which is she trying to get out of something, you know, like what at the end of the day, when you're looking at, you know, if we're talking in the work context, is the work continuing to be produced? Is the job being done, completed, whatever the situation is? Is this person, I mean, accommodations are not going to get you out of performance evaluations.
Right.
You know, that's not what this is. You are still subject to those things, as you should be. You know, can you do your job well? Yes or no? I mean, you should know. An employer should be able to give you more money if you are doing well, or say, you know what, you kind of sucked, you got to go. Like,
right. Well, and two, I think that was something we brought up on the first episode of this dive into disclosure of, at the end of the day, what a disclosure really is, or not disclosure, what's the word?
Accommodation.
Thank you. What an accommodation really is getting at is, this is going to be something that makes me do my job better. As your employee, you should want me to do my job better.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully, and sometimes it does fall under, you know, sometimes it's like, well, this accommodation is here to not cause undue stress or harm onto me. And so it's like, this accommodation makes it so that when I work 40 hours a week for you, it feels like 40 hours a week, not 120. This accommodation makes it so that I do not go home and am completely unable to live any other type of life. This accommodation makes it so that I can, you know, not only be a good employee for you, but also be able to do that for you and still have value to my life.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it should enhance your performance. It shouldn't do anything other than that. In whatever way that means, you know. Yeah. Let's see. Are there any other noteworthy things? Okay. They may believe you're unable to do your job based on a mental defect, which we've kind of already covered.
Yeah.
They may think you use it as an excuse for your poor performance, which we already talked about that too. They may feel that you were not honest and forthcoming in your interview, which we kind of touched on this last week too. Maybe yes, maybe no. You know, I wasn't feeling like I even needed to have any accommodations until the world started getting really loud for me.
Right.
You know, things come up. You know, it could be, I talked to my psychiatrist yesterday a little bit about it, you know, could be coming on the heels of some other things, you know, just making everything just seem like so much bigger. It doesn't matter what maybe construction started outside of your building and now you can't fucking concentrate.
Yeah. Well, and to me, part of it is like, oh, you weren't forthcoming in your interview of like, I don't know. I fucking hate interviews. Oh my God. I fucking hate interviews. But like, I don't know. I have never, I don't think this is me being overly pessimistic about them. They seem, the vast majority of cases, to be presented as somewhat, that you're there to prove yourself, that you're there to put the absolute best foot forward. And the way they motivate you to do that isn't so that like you're showing off the best, is because you're up against other people. And so there's not a huge incentive to say things that will make it difficult to hire you in that process.
Yeah. I think for in the majority of cases, that's probably true.
Yeah. And
I try not to interview people. Sorry.
I was going to say, I just, also too, even in the cases where it's not true, I think the culture of it, just the culture of interviews puts the person interviewing for that position in that mindset.
I guess to me, it's akin to dating in the sense that you know the game you're playing, though. Like, if you're trying to get a job, you have to do an interview. If you're trying to get a relationship, you have to do some kind of date or talking. Like, it's just what you're doing. So, like, to me, like, yes, all those things are true. It just doesn't seem like a big deal to me because, like, those are the rules of the game. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, to get B, you must do A. Like, to me, that's how my brain is. But my friend, he was just like, oh, that's so Aquarian of you. I was like, what? Like, okay.
Like, oh, because you're an Aquarius?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking about dating apps and stuff when I was talking about it with him. But, you know, apparently people don't think about that. Not think about it, but just like, to me, I don't expect anything different, I guess. Mm-hmm. It is not comfortable.
No,
I don't
love it. That's a good way to put it, that you wouldn't expect anything different.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You are up against, you don't know how many other people. Mm-hmm. You are there to sell yourself a little bit, which is difficult if you know, but also I feel like I haven't gone on an interview in a very long time, over 12 years, I guess. And I feel like now with my confidence where it is, I feel like it would be overall easier these days.
Honestly, I think for me, think is wrong. I know for me it would be harder to interview, but part of it was before, and to your extent, or to what you were saying of like, I knew that interviewing was a necessary part, and so I built skills as an interviewer or an interviewee of, you know, taking practice ones online, coming up with answers for the so-called difficult questions. But like, I was even doing just some online applications, and one of them asked, you know, what does it was like part of their company name or something. It was like, what does power mean to you, or what is such and such thing to do? And I was like, and I wrote, it doesn't mean anything. I edit stuff really good, and if you want to hire me to edit stuff, I will edit stuff. They didn't call me back. But that's kind of where I am now, of like, if you have like, what fucking, if you're going to ask unserious questions, I don't really want to, I don't want to deal with that.
I mean, that speaks to the culture.
Yeah.
They think a lot of themselves.
Yeah. But like, if, you know, and part of it is, you know, and I realize like everybody has to do that at a certain age. I would have done that. And it's not that I'm better than that now. I just don't have I had more tolerance for it then. I was more, and
well, you didn't have as many options, maybe.
Yeah. And I guess too, I'm looking for different stuff out of employment now. But like, if, I don't know, I don't want to have to ask, if you have a question about the job, what kind of, you know, all of that stuff, that's great. And if you have even some questions that are like kind of trying to fill me out, but like, if we're going to go on this I don't know, maybe this sounds like whining, but if we're going to go on this dumb bullshit ride about what does maximum mean to you? I'm like, fucking no. I want to be here to edit. I want, yeah.
I think underlying over the last, this will be episode 14, it sounds like, you just really don't like working for other people, I've gathered.
Oh, I'm not fond of it.
I mean, not that I'm in your brain, but no. Everything that you've talked about with other jobs that you've had, like, it is a thing with ADHD specifically where working for other people can be very difficult. Not being not wanting to be told what to do, all of these kinds of things. It's not just because, you're a rebel. It's just like sometimes, I don't know. I think you're well suited for what you're up to now.
Right. And too, like, yeah, probably. I mean, there was like, I don't know, because there were like occasions, like when I did the film stuff, I wasn't, I wasn't the director. I was a executive producer. But I wasn't a producing producer a lot of the time. So I don't have a problem not being high up on the totem pole. Or no, that's not a great sentence to use anymore. I don't have a problem with the hierarchy in a job. And maybe it was just because it was people I liked, or, people that I work well with. But I do have a problem with dumb bullshit at a job.
Well, I think, I don't know if this is the same for you. I don't like being told what to do or how I should live my life by people I don't respect in whatever realm they're trying to give me this advice or direction in. I really just hate it. But that's because I don't respect them. Mm-hmm. So it's probably what you just said, but in a different way that I said it. Like, I don't want someone telling me how to, I don't know, raise my cats when they don't have one, or I don't like how they do it with theirs. Right. Leave me alone. Yeah. But if I like how your cats are, let me get some tips. It's like that for me. Right. Like, yeah. Yeah.
I would put it this way. I don't know, but there's definitely something there. Mm-hmm. You're on to something. I don't know what exactly
pattern
it is.
Recognition helps me with that.
You're on to something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. I knew it, but thank you. Okay. So they also, I didn't even think about not having my diagnosis presented, but I guess you could try it if you don't have a formal diagnosis or you don't want to actually give that documentation, but most likely they will ask you for it. And I do think it is within the confidential rights of HR. They do have to protect your personal information, but with something like this, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know what the actual law is, but for me, I would never just be like, I have ADHD, you must accommodate me. This is what I want. Right. It's like, well, here's why I think this because the doctor said it. And this is what I'm requesting. Some things, some of the things that I asked for, other solutions were also presented, which are great. Like it could be a conversation that goes well and even more options are presented because I don't always know exactly what I need or what's available to me. Right. And, the powers that be might have a better idea too. But yeah, like they may question the validity, of your diagnosis and question it as a disability specifically, which is where I read into it a little bit and was like, oh, ADHD is considered a disability by law, which that was an interesting, not revelation because I kind of knew it, but then just like seeing it, okay, I guess I am disabled in that sense, which I don't even like that word, but that is the term.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's kind of wild to me, just as, because when I had my company, we did have a few employees, not many. I think at our highest count, 3, excluding me and my partner. And man, like I would have never even, if one of them was like, hey, I have this thing, whatever it was, mental, physical, I would have never been like, okay, I would have never even thought of, hey, oh, well, prove it. Give me some kind of documentation. That is wild to me. And I could, I don't want to be a corporate shill or anything like that. I could maybe understand on a large scale where that might be necessary and stuff like that. But man, it is weird to hear you say it right now. I just never even thought of having to prove that. Yeah. If someone had told me,
I mean, when you're sick over 3 days at my job, you have to give a doctor's note. Otherwise, I mean, you won't necessarily get fired or anything, but like you just need documentation over a certain point because our handbook says, you can miss 2 days of work a month or whatever it is, without an excuse, basically. Just, I don't know. That's just our policy.
Right.
But like, yeah, I wouldn't have thought to not bring that because that's also like who I'm a data person. Here's the data to tell you this. It's not just, trust me.
Right.
Which I am a trustworthy person, thankfully, but not everybody knows that. I mean, everyone at work knows that. But like, if I were to go somewhere else and need some kind of accommodation, I can't think of an example, but like, I would think to do that. And not that I don't believe other people, but like, it's kind of a slippery slope if you don't. And I mean, speaking from experience, we have just so many employees, like, it's important to have stuff like that on file. And only like 1 or 2 people will ever even see that or know it. It's not spread around like wildfire. No one has that, but it's important to have that documented somewhere. That stuff is important.
Well, and I think too, especially as companies grow, is especially not in all cases, but it's good to have documentation.
It is. Okay, so let's say you ask for, accommodations, have the conversation, and that might be difficult in and of itself. So what could you potentially expect on the other end of that? Just keep in mind, asking doesn't always mean receiving, no is an answer, unfortunately, or fortunately, it depends. And if it's a no, and you really think that this other, it's probably part of a bigger discussion.
Right.
I don't think that someone's gonna be like, absolutely not,
I wish that I didn't think somebody would, but I think some people would.
I guess.
I think some people are very dismissive, especially of things that happen because of chemistry in your brain. But I think you would know that going into it.
I think so too.
At some level. And I really hope that, listener, I really hope that isn't the case for you.
Yeah.
And same. I hope that it becomes the case for less and less people until it's the case for no people.
Agree. Okay. So employers may assume that accommodations are expensive, which they don't necessarily have to cost anything.
No.
Most of mine cost nothing. The one that I thought would cost, I was going to ask for headphones, and I didn't even actually end up putting it on my list, but I was given headphones anyway.
Nice.
Noise canceling. Things like that. Like the other thing is that we're not like the time difference. There are some quieter spaces that I could move to if I'm at the office and things are getting too noisy. There are other places, like literal other locations within the same place that were quieter, that were options that I didn't think about, which I knew that those places were there. But, so there's always something. Let's see. There's a whole list of things online too. I put a link, if you could put it in the show notes. It's on it's to a place that like could list out accommodations based on the difficulty that you're having, or you can sort it in 2 different ways. The other way, I forget that it's been a few weeks since I looked at this because now that we're on week 3. But I thought it was kind of cool, and you can click on it, and then it takes you to that page and explains everything. So if there's something that you think could be helpful for you, you can just peruse the list. It's a pretty long one and not exhaustive, but pretty thorough. And then they could grant accommodations and then make it impossible for you to use them. Like if I can't think of any. I can't think of an example.
Right. I got nothing.
I was like, maybe something with the headphones. I don't know. Anyway, it's possible for them to be like, yes, we'll do it. But then actually, though, logistically, that's not going to work out. Like if you're like, okay, I need 25% of my day to be outside of like typical working hours, but then you're expected to be on call between 9 and 5 anyway.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say they might give it to you on a technicality.
Yes.
Like I know you technically did this thing, but it's not really helping.
Yeah. Like prove I didn't let you do this. Yeah. And then just be prepared to educate your employer about your situation, which it sucks that it falls on you, but then also like, people don't know everything or are wanting to learn about things necessarily or go out of their way to do it. So it's an opportunity for you to provide that to them, which, I try to do as best as I can personally, but not everyone is motivated to do that. Some people are real cozy in their situations.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is very reliant on the neuro-D individual to advocate for themselves, explain themselves. This could be a very triggering and arduous process.
Right.
Could be worth it.
Yeah.
Could not be.
I think that's kind of the theme we've gotten through these 3 episodes of like, this is there's no cookie cutter on this. This is, you've really got to weigh all these pros and cons for yourself. And, I hope it's in a situation where you can get the things that you need.
Yeah. Well, any last thoughts? Final thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I don't want to just assume that we don't have anybody who does employ people listening. If you do employ people, or if you're in some kind of management position, it would be nice if you started looking into and maybe getting a little bit of education on this and be willing to listen. I do believe that accommodations, in the end of the day, in the vast majority of cases, are going to be a net benefit, not only for the employer, but also for the company. So it's not even a sacrifice thing. This could really help you get more out of your employees.
Yeah. Get outside of your comfort zone too.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Yeah. It's impossible for everyone to know everything.
Right.
Which I don't. As I was saying earlier, this is totally not related, but it's such a funny story to me. So I was I used to do a lot of interviews when I was a manager in a different industry. I worked at a coffee shop. I was a manager of a coffee bean. I try not to interview people now because I just do this weird staring thing, and I don't look at any of the questions that get printed out, and I just ask whatever I want. It's very intimidating for the interviewee, and I know that, and so I'm just like, please don't involve me unless you are really screwed.
Right.
And need someone. It's not even on purpose. I try to be, anyway. But okay, so one summer, the promo material for Coffee Bean was something ridiculous like this. Summer begins with the purple straw and ends when our promotional drinks or whatever run out. Something like that, where it was just such a letdown of like the last part of it. But one person that I interviewed and hired, I said, well, basically, why do you want this job? I don't know what the real question was. And he was like, I truly believe that summer begins with a purple straw. And I was like, oh, this guy has to work here.
Nice.
That was pretty good. Fun hiring story.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. I don't really have any other thoughts about this. I'm not close to the microphone. Other than my accommodation story went well. It may not go that well for other people. I'm always of the mindset of why not try, but I also understand that people are assholes and you may not be listened to. And just if you really understand the context of where you work, make your decision based on that.
Yeah.
Just be as realistic as you possibly can. Don't set yourself up for failure. Honestly, like this could be very triggering and might give you some setbacks. It's potential. I am always wanting people to advocate for themselves, but also at the same time, I don't want you to be setting yourself up for,
You have to recognize your own situation.
Yes. Yeah. So again, one size does not fit all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you liked any bit of that, please like, subscribe, whatever. If you could give us a 5-star review, that would be great, listener.
Also, if you write something, that would be great. The written reviews, I think, actually are very helpful.
Oh yeah, write something nice or funny or anything. I never. Can we look at those?
We could if somebody writes one.
Could other people?
Could other people look at the written reviews?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're mostly there for other people.
I don't read reviews. Cool. Well, yeah, do that. Drop us a line. I might read it. If you want to follow us on Instagram or TikTok, you can do so at InnerMoxiePod. If you want to give us money to support us in our journey on our lives on the D list, I am saying things wrong.
Neuro D baby.
Neuro D baby on our Neuro D list. Go ahead and find us on Patreon. I don't have the link, but
yeah, on Patreon.
InnerMoxie on Patreon. You could email us too for a longer note. myinnermoxiepod@gmail.com. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you may do so at Xanism, Zannism. I'm a religion and a disease. Yeah.
I love that you said may, so implying you have permission to follow now.
You may. I grant permission as I am God.
Yes. Well, I do believe in you.
Well, there's a not atheist over there.
How dare you? No. Yes. If you want to get more of me, there's always my other podcast, the Band Media Podcast, a media history podcast. Also, you can catch me on the socials, but I am most active over on TikTok at Band Ronnie.
True. And with that, we say stay fresh, cheese bags. Bye.
Later.